The first time I met my mother-in-law, Patricia, she looked me up and down and offered a smile that never quite reached her eyes. Daniel always did have unusual taste, she had said with a soft laugh. Everyone else at the dinner table chuckled awkwardly, and I forced myself to smile. Back then, I convinced myself she didn't mean anything by it. I wanted to believe she simply needed time to accept me. 3 years later, after Daniel and I were happily married, I realized I had been wrong. Patricia had never accepted me. She had only become better at hiding it. Our apartment was small but beautiful. It sat on the top floor of a renovated brick building downtown. Sunlight poured through the large windows every morning, and from the balcony, I could see the city skyline glowing at sunset. I loved that apartment. It felt like home. Daniel and I had spent months decorating it together. Every picture frame, every piece of furniture, every plant by the windows carried a memory. At least that's what I thought. One Sunday evening, Patricia invited us to dinner at her house. The moment we arrived, I sensed something was off. Patricia seemed unusually cheerful. Her husband barely spoke. Daniel looked distracted. Halfway through dinner, Patricia set down her wine glass and cleared her throat dramatically. "There's something we need to discuss," she announced. The room grew quiet. She reached beside her chair and picked up a manila folder. My stomach tightened. "What is it?" Daniel asked. Patricia smiled. "A financial matter." She opened the folder and slid several papers across the table toward me. I looked down. At first, I thought I was reading it wrong. Then I read it again and again. The words didn't change. "Rent invoice." My eyes widened. "What is this?" Patricia folded her hands calmly. "It's your rent statement." I laughed nervously. "Rent statement?" "Yes," she replied, "for living in Daniel's apartment." The room fell silent. I stared at her in disbelief. "Patricia, I don't understand." She leaned back confidently. "You've been living there for months without contributing fairly." I blinked. "I pay utilities. I buy groceries. I contribute to every household expense. That's not rent," Patricia said sharply. I looked at Daniel, expecting him to laugh and tell me this was some strange joke. Instead, he simply stared at his plate. My heart sank. Patricia pointed to the papers. "According to my calculations, you owe 6 months of rent, plus late fees." I nearly dropped the invoice. Late fees, of course. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The total amount listed was enormous. The figure made my stomach twist. Several family members sitting nearby exchanged uncomfortable glances. Patricia continued speaking as though she were conducting a business meeting. "Frankly, Emma, I've been patient, but it's time you started paying your share." I felt heat rushing into my face. The accusation hurt, not because of the money, because of what it implied. She was treating me like a stranger who had moved into her son's home for free. As though I wasn't his wife, as though I wasn't family. "I think there's been some misunderstanding," I said carefully. Patricia laughed. "The only misunderstanding is that you've convinced yourself you're entitled to live there without paying." The words struck like a slap. I looked toward Daniel again. Still nothing. No defense. No support. No objection. Just silence. For the first time since our marriage, I felt completely alone. Dinner ended shortly afterward, but the humiliation stayed with me. As Daniel drove us home, I stared silently out the window. The city lights blurred past. In my purse sat Patricia's ridiculous rent invoice. What she didn't know, and what nobody in that family knew, was that hidden inside my desk drawer at home was a document that could destroy every claim she had just made. A document I had kept secret for years, the deed to the apartment. The rent invoice should have been the end of it. Any reasonable person would have realized how ridiculous the demand was and quietly dropped the matter. But Patricia wasn't a reasonable person when it came to me. She was determined, and over the next few weeks, she turned my life into a nightmare. At first, the messages started slowly. Every few days, my phone would buzz with a text from her. Just a reminder that your rent payment is overdue. Or, I expect responsible adults to honor their financial obligations. I ignored them. Then came the emails. Patricia began sending professionally formatted notices that looked like official collection letters. Some even included fake penalties and interest charges. The absurdity would have been funny if it weren't so exhausting. One evening, I opened my inbox and found another message waiting for me. Past due notice. Balance owed $8 $450. I stared at the screen in disbelief. The amount seemed to grow every week. When Daniel walked into the room, I showed him the email. "Can you please talk to your mother?" I asked. He sighed heavily. "You know how she is." I looked at him. That answer hurt more than the email itself. "You don't think this is wrong?" Daniel rubbed his forehead. "Of course it's wrong. Then why won't you stop it?" He remained silent. That silence was becoming a habit. And every time it happened, I felt another piece of my trust breaking. Soon Patricia's campaign spread beyond texts and emails. She began involving the entire family. At birthdays, holiday dinners, and family gatherings, she casually mentioned my unpaid rent. She spoke about it so often that relatives started believing her version of events. I noticed the change immediately. Some family members became distant. Others offered unsolicited advice. One aunt even pulled me aside during a barbecue. "You know," she whispered, "marriages work better when both partners contribute financially." I nearly laughed. If only she knew the truth, but I wasn't ready to reveal it yet. Instead, I smiled politely and changed the subject. The lies continued growing. Patricia told people I was taking advantage of Daniel. She claimed I contributed nothing to our household. She even hinted that I had married him for financial security. Each rumor felt like a fresh betrayal. The woman wasn't simply attacking my finances. She was attacking my character. Then one afternoon, everything finally became clear. I had stopped by Patricia's house to drop off some documents Daniel needed. As I approached the front door, I heard voices coming from the kitchen window. Patricia was talking with one of her closest friends. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but then I heard my name. So I stopped. "Eventually she'll leave," Patricia said confidently. Her friend laughed. "You really think so? Of course, that's the entire point." My stomach dropped. "Point what point?" Patricia continued. "Daniel deserves someone better. Someone from the right background. If I keep applying pressure, she'll get tired and walk away." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The rent wasn't about money. It never had been. This was a plan, a deliberate attempt to destroy my marriage. I stood frozen as the truth settled over me. Years of criticism, years of passive-aggressive comments, years of manipulation. It had all been leading to this. When I finally returned home, I walked straight to my office. Inside the bottom drawer of my desk sat a locked metal box. I opened it carefully. There, resting exactly where I had left it years ago, was a single document. The apartment deed. My grandfather had transferred ownership to me long before I met Daniel. Legally, unquestionably, the apartment belonged to me. I traced my fingers across the paper and felt a calm determination replace my anger. Patricia believed she was winning. She thought her lies were working. What she didn't realize was that every lie was pulling her closer to a truth she would never see coming. And when that truth finally came out, her entire web of deception would collapse in front of everyone. After discovering Patricia's true intentions, I stopped responding to her messages. No more explanations. No more defending myself. No more trying to earn the approval she had never intended to give. Instead, I waited. Sometimes the strongest move isn't reacting. It's allowing someone enough rope to expose themselves. Over the next month, Patricia became even bolder. The rent notices kept arriving. The rumors kept spreading. And every family gathering seemed to include a new story about my supposed irresponsibility. I noticed something else, too. The more Patricia lied, the more confident she became. She genuinely believed she had control of the situation. She thought I was cornered. She thought I had no way to fight back. That confidence would become her biggest mistake. One Friday afternoon, Daniel came home looking uneasy. My mother is hosting a family dinner on Sunday, he said. I looked up from my book. Another one. He nodded. She says it's important. I almost laughed. Of course it was important. Patricia never did anything without a purpose. And deep down, I knew exactly what was coming. She was preparing for one final public attack. For a brief moment, I considered refusing to go. But then I remembered the deed locked safely inside my desk drawer. A small smile crossed my face. No, I said calmly, we'll be there. Sunday arrived. Patricia's house was packed. Nearly every relative had shown up. Aunts, uncles, cousins, family, friends. The atmosphere felt strange from the moment we walked in. People kept glancing at me, whispering when they thought I wasn't looking. Patricia greeted everyone with exaggerated warmth. When she saw me, her smile widened. It was the smile of someone who believed victory was already guaranteed. Dinner passed slowly. I barely touched my food. Patricia, meanwhile, seemed unusually excited. Finally, as dessert plates were cleared away, she stood from her chair and tapped her glass with a spoon. The room fell silent. My heart remained steady. This was it. Patricia folded her hands dramatically. Before everyone leaves, I'd like to address a family matter. Several relatives nodded. I noticed Daniel shift uncomfortably beside me. Patricia looked directly at me. As many of you know, I've been trying to resolve a financial issue for months. A few people exchanged knowing glances. Here we go, she continued. Unfortunately, despite repeated reminders, Emma has refused to pay rent while living in Daniel's apartment. Murmurs spread through the room. Patricia pulled several papers from a folder. The same fake invoices. The same fake notices. The same lies. I've done everything possible to handle this privately, she said dramatically, but some people refuse to take responsibility. The accusation hung in the air. All eyes turned toward me. Months earlier, I would have felt humiliated. Now I simply felt ready. Patricia crossed her arms. Would you like to explain yourself, Emma? The room became silent enough to hear a clock ticking in the hallway. Slowly, I stood. Patricia looked pleased. She expected excuses. She expected tears. She expected surrender. Instead, I smiled, a calm, confident smile. Then I reached into my handbag and removed a large envelope. Confusion flickered across Patricia's face. I walked around the table and handed copies of the document inside to several relatives. One by one, they began reading. The room grew quieter with every passing second. An uncle frowned. A cousin's eyes widened. Someone gasped. Patricia's confident expression began to crack. What is that? She demanded. No one answered. They were too busy reading. Finally, Daniel's uncle looked up from the page. His voice was filled with disbelief. Patricia, this says Emma owns the apartment. The room exploded into shocked whispers. Patricia's face turned completely white. For years, she had treated me like a guest. For months, she had charged me rent. But now every person in that room was staring at the undeniable truth. The apartment had never belonged to Daniel, and it certainly had never belonged to Patricia. It belonged to me, and the real shock was only beginning. The room fell into complete silence. For a moment, nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The only sound was the soft rustling of papers as family members continued reading the deed. I stood calmly beside the table while Patricia stared at me as though she had seen a ghost. Her face had lost all color. The confidence she had carried for months vanished in seconds. This can't be right, she stammered. I folded my hands in front of me. It is right. Several relatives looked back and forth between us. One cousin examined the document again. The property is legally registered in Emma's name, he said. And according to this date, she owned it years before she even met Daniel. The whispers grew louder. People were beginning to connect the pieces. Every accusation, every rent demand, every family lecture. All of it had been based on a lie. Patricia opened and closed her mouth, searching desperately for an explanation. There must be some mistake, she finally said. No mistake, I replied quietly. For the first time in months, I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I wasn't even nervous. I simply felt free. An older aunt looked toward Patricia. So you demanded rent from the actual owner of the apartment? The question hung in the air like a spotlight. Patricia had no answer. Another relative frowned. And you told everyone she was living there for free. More silence. Daniel sat frozen beside me. His eyes remained fixed on the deed. I could see guilt spreading across his face. The truth wasn't only exposing Patricia. It was exposing his silence. For months he had watched his mother attack me. For months he had chosen comfort over courage. Now everyone could see it. Finally, Patricia slammed her hand on the table. You kept this secret. I almost laughed. That was her defense. Not the false invoices. Not the rumors. Not the manipulation. My secret ownership was somehow the problem. I never hid it to deceive anyone. I said calmly, I simply didn't think ownership mattered. I believed families should treat each other with respect regardless of money. Several relatives nodded. Patricia looked away. The truth hurt because it revealed exactly what she valued: status, control, power. Things I had never cared about. Then I decided to deliver the final piece of my revenge, not through anger, not through humiliation, but through grace. I smiled gently. You know, Patricia, I've been thinking about rent. Her eyes widened. The room became silent again. If we're charging people for using property they don't own. I continued, then technically every holiday dinner, birthday party, and family gathering you've hosted in my apartment over the last 3 years should have generated a bill. A few relatives laughed. Others covered their mouths to hide their smiles. Patricia looked absolutely horrified. I let the moment linger before continuing, but don't worry. Everyone watched closely. I'm not sending anyone an invoice. The room remained silent. Because families shouldn't treat each other like business transactions, the words hit harder than any insult could have. Patricia lowered her eyes. For once, she had nothing to say. No clever response, no criticism, no excuse. Just silence. The very silence I had endured for months. Then Daniel stood up. His voice trembled slightly. Emma, I'm sorry. Every head turned toward him. I should have defended you. I should have stopped this a long time ago. I could see genuine regret in his eyes. For the first time in months, I believed him. The evening ended shortly afterward. Relatives approached me one by one to apologize for believing the rumors. Some admitted they had doubted me. Others confessed they felt ashamed for staying silent. As for Patricia, she left the room without another word. That night, as Daniel and I drove home, I looked up at the apartment building, glowing against the evening sky. The place my grandfather had left me, the place Patricia had tried to use against me. In the end, I didn't win because I owned the apartment. I won because the truth was stronger than every lie she told. And sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't making someone suffer. It's allowing them to face the consequences of their own actions, while you walk away with your dignity, your peace, and your head held high.